This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the July 13th edition of the Iowa 911 Communications Council. If we could please, Kara, could you give us an official roll call?
Sure. Chris Jasper or Shanna Grossmeyer? Shanna's on. Lawrence Harpeth?
I'm on. I'm not sure if Chris is going to join or not. But...
Yeah, I kind of think he's on vacation, so I'll mark him present. Lawrence Harpeth?
George Griffith's here.
Okay, thank you, George. Mike Bryan? It's on. Okay. Tom Berger?
I'm here.
No. Tracy Bearden? I think it's also on. Richard Pierce?
Here.
Rob Dennert? Jack D'Angelo? I think those you got four.
Okay, thank you. Tracy said she was here on the chat. Okay.
All right.
We'll forego the guest introductions since we have so many people scattered all over. If I could, though, could I have a motion to approve today's agenda? Pearson, make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
How about any against? Okay, motion carries. And then likewise, can I get a motion for the June 8th, 2023 minutes? Pierce will make the motion. Okay. Have a second?
Griffith will second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Again, same sign. And motion carries. Blake, do we have a report?
We do. Thank you. Slides up. All right, this is a busy slide. It's interesting how topics and issues kind of merge together. So I'll kind of take the first two together, and you could probably also add the topic of non-initialized phones into those as well. So many of you at your PSAPs have noticed a drastic increase in abandoned calls. And again, those top two things are kind of related. What we're finding is that many of the Android phones have gone through a software upgrade, and there's a number of emergency and SOS type features that people might not be aware of that is leading to a number of accidental 911 calls. Apple rolled out a similar upgrade a couple of years ago. Samsung and Android seem to be the trigger for the most recent uptick. So the FCC, the National 911 Office, NENA, I can only assume APCO, are all working with device manufacturers on this. It's been a documented issue nationwide, not just in Iowa. We did a little bit of social media on this as well within our department, so you're more than welcome to share or reshare that. Ali put some graphics together that you're also more than welcome to share and use as you see fit. In a couple of states, including Iowa, this has turned into an issue where there can be a denial of service issue tied to all of this as well. So when non-initialized phones, so basically like phones that no longer have a cell phone plan, they can still reach 911. So as a heads up, if you got kids that are playing with old phones, that's an easy way to accidentally call 911. So what a number of states have experienced appears to be, don't know this, but appears to be as phones are being shipped somewhere, somehow in the shipping process, those 911 emergency features are getting triggered, and it's causing a denial of service issue. So again, we've experienced this in Iowa, Indiana has experienced it, Utah has experienced it, And it is reflected in about a 10-minute period of time where there's a number of devices that are all the same. Verizon was able to trace it to the exact same model to include the color, that were all ringing 911 at the same time. So again, it's interesting how all three of those topics have kind of come together. So luckily, I guess, for all of these issues so far, it's been about this like 10-minute period of time, and it just then stops. In all of these, you can kind of hear some alarms or sirens in the background, which I think is odd, but it's also odd that it's all similar across the states as well. So again, I'm not 100% convinced that it's tied to shipping, but there's just some stuff that looks like perhaps that's how this is getting triggered. Again, they're all non-initialized phones. They're all the same device. So as a reminder, if something like this were to happen, get a hold of us at the 911 program. It's something that we relay on to the Fusion Center. It's probably something that is worthwhile to still report to the FBI through CISA, some of those same channels that we talked about with ransomware or any cyber issue. But just know that this is kind of going on throughout the nation, and be aware of it. So I will do a similar type of spiel next week at the regional supervisor group meetings to get the word out further. So just know that that's going on. Something to keep in mind for everyone, and this is just an idea we're floating, and I'm moving to the next bullet now. We are very closely keeping an eye on what the surcharge amount is and if it's still meeting the needs to manage and run 911 in the state. So nothing is imminent, but we're looking at various options. Knowing that raising a surcharge could be a little bit controversial at the legislature, another way to free up money is to think through, ways that we can cut costs. And this one's not going to be popular, but I'm asking the council members to put on your perhaps council member hat and not necessarily, the agency or PSAP that you represent. A couple of years ago, there was a bill passed that allowed the ICN to do direct billing to local agencies. One of our significant costs is when PSAPs move. Historically, we have covered 100% of the costs associated with moving the ICN connection as well. That means if a PSAP is moving and there's a significant build involved, we're paying the hundreds of thousands of dollars to move that connection. The question we're wrestling with is now that this is a possibility, should a local agency be somewhat, not all of it, not even most of it, just somewhat on the hook for that cost as well. It's not our decision that a PSAP moves, it's a local decision, yet we're the ones funding it. So just throwing that out there for a conversation, something to think about, is a 10% cost share or something like that reasonable to be asked for? Again, 100% we have not made a decision on that. Our approach is to literally ask the council, who is your job to advise us, on the direction with that. So we're not making that decision or even asking the question lightly. We kind of know it's a significant question to ask. So just something to think about. Don't need a decision. Just if you have thoughts on that after the fact, let me know.
And is it hundreds of thousands for each PSAP? Is that an average?
I would say yes. It's six digits a lot of times.
Another question is, and this is always their decision to do, and then you pay for it?
On the ICN piece, yes. And I don't know necessarily the history behind that. I imagine it's because up until a couple of years ago, we, the state, were the authorized entity that was allowed to enter into the contract with ICN. So there are other local costs, absolutely, involved. And there's all the construction costs that are local costs. There's vendor costs to move the equipment. There's absolutely, the PSAP has skin in the game already. The vast majority of the costs are local costs already. This one is one that, again, we've historically paid, and we're just asking the question, should we continue to fund that at 100%? Okay. Moving on, I know CAD to CAD interoperability is a topic for many throughout the state. It's been a topic at the ISICS meeting, but just wanted to bring this up to folks as well. If you are interested in that topic, there's been a lot of national level thought and white papers and pilots that are being done. And it's, again, to share information across disparate CAD systems. So the National 911 Office has released an interoperability report on that topic as well. That is, last time I checked, fairly front and center on their website. So if you're interested in that topic, please go look at that and see what they have to say. A lot of that is tied to their information sharing standard, which is called EIDO. And again, it kind of talks about how you can share information and across CAD systems and across jurisdictions. I mentioned this last month, so I want to provide an update. Last month, the FCC did vote to continue with their notice of proposed rulemaking on the topic of a number of things. Next generation transition, mostly related to wireline, and also wireline cost recovery. So the next steps for that, it was posted in the Federal Register Monday, just a couple days ago, and now it is an open comment period that ends and runs through August 9th. After that, there is a reply comment period that runs through September 8th. At that point, the FCC will take any of those comments under consideration and then issue their final reporting order. So as a reminder, the big topics I see as for Iowa are twofold. The first being cost recovery. The FCC would basically clarify that absent state statute or local contracts being in place, the cost of delivering the 911 call to the state's aggregation point or the state's entry point into the 911 system would be considered a cost of doing business for the wireline provider. That is in line with what they did with wireless back in 2001, but it has kind of been silent on wireline this entire time. So that is a big component of the proposed rulemaking. The other one is clarifying the authority of where wireline providers meet. So we at the state could order that they meet in a certain location, again, similar to the rules with wireless from a number of years ago. And the other thing that does is, as we are ready to receive IP-based calls, similar to the text registry from a number of years ago, if you remember that, we could say, on this date, we are IP ready, and then the carriers would have X amount of dates to deliver their traffic in an IP format. That is one of the questions that the FCC has proposed, is what that X represents. Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? Is it 90 days? Is it a year? How long from the time we say we're ready do the carriers have to deliver that in an IP format? So that is out there. If you want to provide comment on those proposed rules, you certainly can. Another update from last month, we were in the process of rolling out an emergency call routing function, or ECRF, that is geospatial routing. We had a bit of a delay on that, hopefully just delaying that a month out. Again, that's a lot, it's going to be transparent to you all in PSAPs. In theory, location gets better, and call routing gets better. So it's not 100% transparent, but it's transparent from the standpoint you don't have to do anything during that rollout. So again, that's just been delayed a month. A couple changes had to be made within the ECRF database. Talked in the past about 911 to 988 pilot transfers. That's 911 calls to what used to be the National Suicide Hotline. We do have 3 PSAPs doing that pilot, and they are all up and running at this point. We actually have another touch base later today on that. So those are in place. We're still continuing to fine-tune process, procedures. We've also now, we want to talk about, what do you do when you get an admin line call and also need to transfer it to 988? Our sole focus so far has been transferring 911 calls. Obviously, you also get a lot of administrative calls that can be transferred to 988 as well. So that is part of the pilot. So when we do roll it out statewide, we kind of have a lot of those questions answered. So the next step really for the rest of the community will be a survey that will come out probably at the beginning of August. And that'll kind of gauge attitudes at PSAPs and readiness for this type of thing. And it'll help us kind of prioritize where we go next with adding on additional PSAPs to help them and provision them and train them on when it's appropriate to transfer to 988. So that'll be coming the beginning of August. As a reminder, we had GEOCOM and the Department of Education presentations on the critical incident mapping. That's part of the Governor's School Safety Initiative. Those were held late in June. Those recordings are up on our Google Shared site if anyone needs to watch those or is still interested. Just an update for the council. Late in June, Perry PD consolidated and folded into Dallas County Sheriff's Office. So that brings the total number of what we would call primary PSAPs to 111. Also, an email went out earlier this week. ComTech will also be working on an Alley upgrade. A lot of that's user interface, user experience within their Alley database, and that would be July 17th. So I covered a lot. Any questions on any of that?
Blake, I would have a question, and I don't necessarily need an answer, just something that I would think of if I was in the position of having to move a piece that I would think of not. But dealing with the ICN move, I think one of the questions that would come up with any board who, and I don't know the answer to this, but who actually owns ICN?
ICN is, you know what? Let me see if ICN is on the line. There's probably more.
And like I said,
Stephanie, are you on from ICN? Why don't you take that question?
Like I said, I don't really necessarily need an answer. But the reason I ask is then the follow-up is when that connection gets moved, does ICN have its own crews that do that, or is it contracted work? And the reason I ask is, would it be part of a competitive bid if you were building something, or is ICN a closed group that just does all the work themselves?
She is trying to get off of mute. Steph, it looks like you're unmuted on my control panel, so I don't know if you can talk or not, but.
Well, at any rate, I think it'd be a question that might come up. So, maybe going forward, we clarify that. So that was all.
Steph, if you're able to get off of mute at any point while I'm still talking, just feel free to interrupt me. I still got a few slides to go. We can come back to it. All right. Any other questions before I move on to other topics?
Blake, this is Mike Bryant.
Yeah.
Could you, for me, go back and refresh my memory? It was a few months ago, you just kind of gave us a heads up that I believe, I don't know if it was for the cost recovery or for your office's operation. There's a little bit of shortage on available cash in a particular fund. And has that been kind of resolved? I think you maybe borrowed from one account to the other. Kind of just give me up to speed on that, if you would, please.
Yeah, so, a couple things. We've definitely, as I said earlier, we've been keeping our eye on how far the $1 surcharge goes.
Right.
We have not raised the surcharge in Iowa since 2013. We at the state are paying for significantly more than we used to with shared services and wireline consolidation. And it's been 10 years. I think the first quarter of last year, we had to use some of the surplus to pay some of our recurring costs, which is normally we try to keep those separate. It's still within the fund. It's still absolutely, within the purposes of running and managing the program. But again, we kind of like to keep recurring costs and non-recurring costs separate and pay for them separately within the same fund. And that's what we did. And we're continuing to look at that. We haven't had to do that the other 3 quarters. And, you know, so that's what we did. So it's again, just that same conversation of looking to see how far the dollar goes and what all we're covering and still continuing to pay our bills and trying to have that conversation before we get into the red, not after.
Right.
Hey, Blake, it's Steph. Can you hear me?
I can. Steph, can you
Okay.
just hold a second? Let Mike finish his question and then we'll go back.
Sure.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, sometimes if I think it's been 3 months, it's been 6, so I'm a little farther out than I thought.
Yep, no problem.
So if you used some of that money in the surplus, then not that I'm overly concerned, but is the surplus a little lower than it was, or did it get replenished, or we just took some for that first quarter, we'll say, and borrowed a little, or took a little out of the surplus, and it's still a little less than it normally is?
Yeah, so next month is when we kind of cover the financials.
Yep.
So the other 3 months, we have continued to add money to the surplus, or I'm sorry, the other 3 quarters, we will have added money to the surplus.
Okay.
Mike, you've been around long enough to remember when, you know, we had $24 million sitting in the surplus, and that caused other discussions. So, I mean, the entire purpose of kind of retooling how we do pass-through is to lower that. And we've absolutely lowered that by paying for more things that local jurisdictions normally previously paid for, as well as passing more through at the end of the fiscal year. So we have absolutely lowered the surplus. For the last couple of years, it's been around $7 million to $9 million, and that's kind of still where it is. And we have not done the end of year calculations yet, so I can't tell you what is going to get passed through at the end of the fiscal year that we normally do, like the beginning of August. I think all of that kind of goes into the recipe of, you know, do we need to try to make the argument that we need to raise the surcharge, you know, when we close the books on this fiscal year.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Blake. Like I said, I just wanted to get up to date on that, and then so I have it if we do have further discussions, as you mentioned earlier down there. Thank you very much.
No problem. Steph, do you want to go back to the chair's question?
Sure. Where do you want me to jump in? I feel like there was a lot of questions that were being asked. So I'll dive in, and you guys can ask away or tell me to stop. So, excuse me. So Blake is absolutely correct. There are many things that are completely out of our control where we've had issues where some of these buildings, some of these PSAP locations are old. They've got issues where they might have asbestos in them. They're tearing them down, rebuilding. We have to move circuits or move fiber from the old location to a temporary location and then move it back once the new location is in place. There is also issues where we'll just say the owner of the building is remodeling where all the equipment goes, and it's now going to a different place in the building altogether, or they decide that they're going to move the building from one end of town 4 miles to another location, which requires us to build. So we're seeing a handful of reasons on why there are fiber moves or what we need to do. The ICN does partner with providers, or we partner with the locals in order to help us move the fiber. The fiber is owned by the ICN, but we also have contracting crews that we acquire to help us do the work for fiber builds, engineering plans, permitting, you name it. The ICN has a commission. Our commission is called the ITTC, that reports directly to the governor. So we are a government agency, just like the rest of you guys, that we are not part of the realignment structure where we are staying as is. So once a month, I report, just like Blake is to you guys, to a committee and then to a commission.
I would say the other thing is, you know, we're not talking about a ton of moves a year. I would say it's about 2 significant moves, and then, hey, we're gonna remodel and we just want, our equipment room changed. So, to be totally transparent, we're not talking about millions of dollars here. We're just trying to free up whatever we can.
And the only reason I asked is that I know that if a board was looking at the cost of the possibility of moving their center, that one of the questions would come up, that I would expect would be, who is ICN? Because not everybody knows who ICN is, who owns them, and then who works for them. Because they're going to want to know what the costs are and why they are what they are. And I think it would just be education for those boards, because it has to be part of the discussion if you're going to move. Does it make sense to move? Is it cost effective to move? And so I would just anticipate those questions to come up. So thank you.
And absolutely. And Blake is absolutely 100% correct. We don't have a boatload that happen every year. Off topic, I know, or off my head, I know that Palo Alto County, they were the one that, had a new building come up that was right across the way from them. And then I believe Harrison is also doing a remodel in their comm center, which is requiring temporary relocative services and then back into the facility. It's just small things like that. But yeah, Blake is absolutely correct. We don't see huge more than once or twice a year. I think last year we saw one, which was like Centerville.
Okay, thank you.
For sure.
Right, I'm going to keep us rolling. There'll still be more time for questions if you have them. So just talking on the GIS grants, again, you guys have continued to hit the benchmarks at a higher rate as we've continued to raise the requirements. So this slide kind of shows, the last 2 quarters of the year, every county, every jurisdiction met all of the benchmarks. So you can see the amount that we passed through for the entire fiscal year is $1.3 million. And you can see what we've passed through for grants in the other fiscal years. And again, as we've stair-stepped the requirements, counties have just continued to meet those benchmarks and exceed their previous performance. So great job to everyone in the GIS community that does that and everyone that's involved. So now that we are in the new fiscal year, the new benchmarks are in place. It's the same benchmarks with the exception that instead of quarterly uploads, we are now looking and needing monthly uploads. And that, we've talked about that for over a year now that we're heading in that direction. And it's directly tied to using the GIS data on a regular basis, day to day for call flow. We want to make sure that information is up to date. So I have no reason to expect that we see a drop off just from the standpoint of just what I said. Every time we've raised the benchmarks and the requirements, you all have continued to meet those and exceed previous performance. So just a reminder that monthly uploads are now a thing for the next 12 months. There are 2 training applications for your consideration later in the agenda. DESCOM's renovation time rebuilding your 911 foundation. That does not have to do with moving PSAPs, as our previous conversation. And then Westcom or Polk County has requested the NENA Center Supervisor Program. And you can see the amounts there. Again, we'll talk about those here shortly. I don't know that I haven't seen anyone from ILEA, but I know they're wanting to socialize the upcoming 40-hour basic telecommunicator class. You can see the dates and then the locations associated with upcoming training that is being held throughout the state. Any questions for me before I turn it over to Zetron? All right, Lynn, if you are on from Zetron, you are up.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm on my phone. For some reason, I too had audio problems, so hope this is working okay. Yeah, quick updates. We got Bremer County going live next week. We've got Cedar Falls DPS is going live in August 30th. We've also got Harrison County and Floyd County on deck doing our deployments, and they'll be a little later this year. Next slide, please. This is what the map is looking like. And we've got 77 PSAPs that are signed up with 73 that are live. Next slide. As always, if you're interested in getting a copy of our Iowa Insider newsletter, this is available to both shared services, non-shared services PSOPs if you're interested. Just send an email to lynn.warren@zetron.com. We'll get you onto the distribution list. And unless there's any questions, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to training fund requests. Do we have anyone from DESCOM that wants to speak on their application?
Shanna Krogmeyer here with DESCOM. So I had an employee reach out to me about, he had seen Tracy, gosh, I just blanked on her name.
Eldridge.
Yes, thank you, Eldridge. Speak in a training in Illinois, and then we also had her at APCO and NINA this year. This is a little bit different training it's different training than what she presented at APCO and NINA, but I think the goal is just to bring some high quality training to Southeast Iowa specifically. It's not always easy to get everybody to Des Moines for APCO and NINA. Especially since we've got quite a ways to travel in some cases. So the opportunity to bring a great speaker to Southeast Iowa was kind of the goal of this.
Okay, any questions?
Can you all hear me now? This is Tracy. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so one question I have is, do you expect to have 50 individuals participate? Because if you do, then you're going to be making $50. And so I guess my recommendation or request is, if you go over the amount of that 10% requirement from the council, that you reimburse the participants, because I don't think the 10% was intended to have with the grant and agencies, even though it's only $50, keeping extra funds.
Sure, I don't have a problem with. I think the only reason I put $10 on it was because that kind of holds them accountable for actually attending.
Yeah. No, and I agree. I think that's a good thing. It makes them want to come and attend. I just, a lot of times you're not going to get the maximum. I just wanted to make sure that those funds would be returned to the participants if for some reason you get all 50.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have a problem with doing that. I guess I don't know how that would how you would factor in who gets their money back. The other option would be just to reimburse the state the money that was extra.
Yeah, that was the other option, but it's a good training, and I prefer to be able to. I think the council would probably prefer. I can't speak on everybody's behalf to give you that funding, and then instead of taking it back. But again, that would be up to you and the other council members.
Sure.
Okay. If I have a motion to approve, do I have a motion to approve with any caveat such as that added to it? However one would word that.
Okay, I guess it's up to you. Would you prefer the council to reimburse if it goes over, just reimburse less that amount that goes over your $10, or would you like to figure out how to reimburse the participants? That's up to you.
I think reimbursing the council would be easier.
Okay.
So it kind of sounds like it's something that we can deal with on the back end if you do get your 50.
Yeah.
Does that sound fair?
Yeah. That sounds fair to me.
Okay. So with that in mind, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
So moved, Bearden.
Okay. Now I have a second. You want to say a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Again, same sign. And motion is approved. Okay, we have one from Westcom Polk County. Does anyone want to speak on that?
Jessica is supposed to be on the line. I'm not sure if she is or not.
I am. This is Jessica with Westcom. So this is geared towards the newly hired or recently appointed supervisors. We had I think 3 people attend last year or the year before. We've had other supervisors attend, and they spoke very highly, said it was one of the best courses that they've ever gone to, and thought we'd bring it to the Metro to try and get some more people that have the same experience and same training.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I just need to
All
make
right.
the comment that because my relationship with Westcom, I need to abstain from the vote.
Understood.
So,
Okay.
Mrs. Lawrence, I also need this thing.
Okay.
And Griffith's the same.
Okay. All right. With that in mind, do I have a motion to approve?
Well, since everybody just bailed out, I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Again, same sign. And motion is approved. Okay, thanks. All right, moving on. Do we have any technical advisories? Okay, hearing none. Can we get an update from Hallie, please?
Thank you, Chair. I will just quickly remind everybody that you still have time to fill out the SafeCom nationwide survey. So if you've seen that in your email, if you haven't yet filled it out, please do so. I'm sure ECC Myers will talk more about that. We are working on a standard for the new school radio setup to make that clear on how those are to be used. If anybody has any insight or wants to join those meetings, please let me know. And we have a goal to apply for the REM CDP grant. That application is due July 28th. The award would be for $2 million for rural emergency medical communications. It's a demonstration project. And if we were awarded, we'd know that by the end of September 2023. So we're working diligently there. The COMT was postponed due to we didn't meet the minimum registration. So we are looking at dates starting October 23rd here more locally at ILEA in Johnston. As soon as I confirm that we have instructors for that course, I will post it. So if anybody is interested in that and would like that registration, please reach out to me so we can get you registered. Incident Tactical Dispatcher course, registration is live. That'll be held in Pot County October 3rd to the 6th. There's a 20 student maximum, so if you're interested, please find that registration and fill that out. October will show up quickly here. And then we are looking forward to a wholly in-person meeting for the ISIC board next month. So if there's people you want to meet from that board, that would be a great time to also be in person. And unless there's any questions, I think that pretty much covers this month.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Get an update from U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security, Chris Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, 911 Council. Thank you again for the time today. I want to start off my report this month with a plug for the SafeCom nationwide survey. As Swick Nichols alluded to, we're getting into the closing phases of the survey. And again, I can't stress this enough, this survey is super important for agencies to respond to. This survey goes into all sorts of decisions that are made when it comes to services, products, and even grants that are offered to states. And this data weighs very heavily on those decisions. In the past, when we did this survey back in 2018, that data eventually ended up being used during 2 testimonies on U.S. Capitol Hill to justify the existence of programs, fundings, and products. On the next slide, I have a quick preview of how Iowa is doing currently. This survey does close the 21st, and as of yesterday at 10 o'clock in the morning, Iowa has completed 50 responses, which ranks you 11th nationally. Just for perspective, that puts you on pace with states like California, New York. It puts you ahead of Minnesota, it puts you ahead of Wisconsin. There are currently 81 surveys that have been opened and perhaps partially completed but not submitted. If you were able to get all those surveys completed, you would rank in the top 10 after all is said and done. So with the number of surveys that have been submitted nationally, which is just shy of 1,800, and the number of surveys that are in progress, which is just over 2,500, even with those numbers that are still out there, if you can expedite the responses of some agencies that may not have completed these yet, that would make sure that Iowa's voice is heard nationally. The fact that Iowa is on par with states like California, New York, and Wisconsin and Minnesota speaks volumes to this group as far as generating that response. So again, please make sure that you let your partner agencies know that this survey is important. It is still out there, and you guys are keeping up with some of the states that are much more populated than Iowa. So essentially, you're punching above your weight, which is exactly what we were hoping to see, especially with states that have a lot of rural agencies. So again, one last plug, please take the survey. It does close on July 21st. On the next slide, we do have a new product that came out a couple of days ago. This is a cybersecurity advisory that talks about advanced persistent threats that are targeting Outlook Online. Now, that may not necessarily seem like a big deal to everybody here, but the type of data this group is trying to exfiltrate from online Exchange servers, you think about the sheer number of things that come in via email, and if your email is cloud-based, this is potentially a large data and security breach. This CSA is geared towards your IT personnel, so if they have not received this yet, please pass it on to them. But it does discuss some key points that can be used to make sure that your online Exchange environments are protected, such as audit logging, make sure that your logs are searchable and indexed, and of course, make sure that you understand the baseline configuration for your organization, at least at an IT level. For the end public safety users, this may not be something that you're thinking about every day, but this is certainly something for your IT folks to consider. If you want a copy of this CSA, please let me know. I will get it to you. And of course, if you think you have any suspicious activity on your Exchange servers, please let CISA and the FBI know. We will work with you to try to figure out what's going on and if there's anything that can be done to help you. Last slide for the day, some regional news of note. We will be starting up the interoperability markers assessment of each state in August. That is expected to run through the end of August, and that is where we sit down with the personnel within the state to kind of do a quick data scrape of where everybody is with respect to interoperability and improvements they've made recently. Historically, Iowa has done very well on this assessment, and we are expecting that with the next markers update happening hopefully in August, that Iowa will continue to do well and move up the ranks. This will be the last year for the current model. We'll be moving to an updated version of it in calendar year 2024. That update has not yet been solidified as far as the scale, scope, and types of data it's going to include, but once we have perhaps more solid visibility on what that'll look like, I'll report out to this group and let everybody know. Otherwise, that's all I have for the day. Mr. Chair, I can take any questions.
Just one quick question related to the survey. In your opinion, who is the ideal person to complete that survey?
So the ideal person to complete that survey would typically be leadership within an organization. I know that when those surveys were sent out, our personnel at headquarters aggregated a database of approximately 5,000 to 6,000 points of contact for agencies nationwide. Each survey link that went out in an email is custom tailored to that agency, so whoever received that email would be the ideal person. If you want to know who that person is, let me know and I can look that up for you. And if that person is no longer with the agency, I can send you the customized agency link so you can take that survey.
Okay, it sounds like in the invite for the survey, that's already taken care of. Yep. So,
yep.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay, moving on. Do we have any updates on the 34A or Administrative Code Committee update?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any updates other than what Blake had expressed earlier. My question is once that the proposed rulemaking is made solid, is there anything that the council wishes us to work on for the 34A?
a good question. And, you know, maybe as we learn more, we'll have a better answer. I don't have anything right now, unless somebody else does.
Yeah, right now it's just been a holding pattern. As far as the next one, the baseline knowledge, no updates on that yet. We're still meeting for the telecommunicator board, making some progress there. I think we're having good conversations, so I look forward to additional good conversations.
Great.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, I doubt we've had any legislative issues pop up lately. Any information sharing by council members? No? Okay. All right, we do have some new business. And this relates to the downtime between this meeting and the ISIX meeting. A lot of waiting around, and I assume that probably does affect the turnout of both meetings. So, been asked to take a look at that and see if perhaps it wouldn't be in our best interest to back this, or move this meeting to 9:30 start time rather than 9. And I would say that with that, if we saw that we had a very full agenda and we thought it would take more time, we can always adjust that in any way we see fit. But is there interest in moving this meeting to 9:30 by the council?
I'm in
Appears to be
favor of that.
Okay. Do we have anybody not in favor that would like to speak about it? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to, from this moment on to, unless otherwise stated, have a start time for the 911 council meeting of 9:30. Do I have a motion for that?
So move, Bearden.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Here's the second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, besides that discussion. All right. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
Again, same sign. And motion carries. All right, I don't have any old business.
Chair, can I
Yes.
go back to information sharing? We should probably mention that Jack D'Angelo retired. That's why he was not on it.
Yes.
And thank him for, he's been on this council for a long time.
Yes, and that,
Very knowledgeable.
yes, and we absolutely appreciate the years that Jack D'Angelo put into this council and the contributions that he made. I wish he was here to tell him that, but if anyone happens to see him, give him a tip of the cap, because he did a lot for this council in 911 in Iowa. Okay, any other business, any business from the floor?
Mr. Chair, if you would indulge me and give me a little bit of grace on time, I would like to bring something up.
Yes.
So as you know, a couple of months ago, I came and requested a class. It would be the second class I've requested in the 4 years that I've been here. It was the Guardian Training and Resiliency Program. We did have that training. It was absolutely fabulous training. But after the training, there was a question that it came up. And Blake had a really great discussion with me, and he actually brought something up that I thought, I feel like we need to discuss it simply because of the fact that I can see how perceptions become reality, and unfortunately that's not always the reality, right? So I did a couple of things. Number one, so I have several people here. I asked Pete Ungaro from Guardian Training to come in. That way, if there's any additional questions after I speak, that, you know, what better way to get it directly from the source, right? Shelby County is also here, as well as Henry County. So a little bit about this training. You guys are all painfully aware, just as we are, that 911 in this industry is oftentimes, when it comes to emergency services, they're the last ones forgotten. So on the flyers that went out, and Blake brought this to my attention, so I very much appreciate that, because I'll be honest with you, I didn't pay much mind to it because I took it in a very different manner. And I just didn't pay attention to it. But on the flyer, and Blake, correct me if I'm wrong, but it said dispatchers encouraged to attend, or
Yeah, the top line was something like first responders, which is telecommunicators, public safety, emergency response, something like that.
Right.
The lower was dispatchers also encouraged to attend, was the language on the flyer.
Right. So, and I can, after talking with Blake, I can completely see how that could be absolutely misperceived, but I knew exactly what the class was and what it offered and what it was for. Now, this is a class that's, I guess it's a little bit different than everything else because it literally encompasses everything, right? So understanding and knowing what the class was, I obviously didn't take anything to it, but because there's a misperception, I definitely want to address that. So what this class does, and the both classes, what they do is it goes into everything that emergency services deals with, especially and including the 911 system of the forgotten. So there's this misnomer out there that there's still a belief that, okay, well, dispatchers are inside and they're answering the phones, but they're not necessarily recognizing or realizing the amount of stress and anxiety and PTSD that can kick in. This is, in my 21 years of going through the ranks, being a lead supervisor, what I can tell you is this. In my time, I have never had, I sent my dispatchers, I sent 2 dispatchers to those classes in the beginning, and that was out of Henry County with Lori and her group. Not only did they call me on break from the class to harass me, the supervisor, Tiffany, who actually spoke to you when we were requesting the classes here, not only did she contact me during the class to harass me to make sure that we were having at our agency, she did not stop until I sent the paperwork in to the council to get the class. I would like, and I have several testimonials from the group of what it brings to them. And pretty much everyone on this side, I think, can talk about that. So I would like for Pete to provide you a little bit of information about the training, not to mention, and I did talk to him about the verbiage on it, and he immediately recognized, oh gosh, yeah, I can see that that's a problem. Pete, if you could share some information about both courses and exactly what it brings, and then also the logo, please.
Absolutely. Can I see it, Mr. Chair? Yeah, I just can't see everybody, so.
Yeah.
So our programs are designed, we have 2 programs that we use primarily. One's called the Guardian Training Project, and that is based in services that deal with trauma on a regular basis. We talk about PTSD, we talk about the reality of it, we talk about what we face, we talk about depression, anxiety, we talk about what the job can do to you if you don't treat it. Dispatchers, like police officers, have anywhere, and this is self-reported surveys, so you got to take them with a grain of salt, anywhere between 18 to 24% rates of PTSD compared to 5% of the public. I just saw a study that came out of Canada not that long ago. It was up to 48% of their emergency responders have PTSD or PTSD diagnosable symptoms. And that's what our first program does, was look at that. It makes you realize what it is. And the way I built the program was to try and break that stigma of mental health. I mean, we work in a paramilitary organization where there's no room for emotions and feelings, and we have to stop that because that's not okay. We do have emotions and feelings, we're human. So what do we try to do is break that stigma of mental health. Part of what I incorporate in the program is when we start, the instructors at the first break will give an example of a traumatic event we went through and how it affected us. And then we come back from the next break, we'll ask somebody, hey, would you like to provide an example? By the end of the day, we have everybody talking about it. And that's done intentionally to understand we're not in this alone, right? We're going through it together. We all have the same thing. So that's kind of the first part of the morning, is the informational part. The afternoon is an active bystander program. As the sheriff, I'm assuming it would be hard for me if I was your employee to come up and say, hey, Sheriff, I see you're not doing very well. What can I do to help you today? Because we don't do that, right? Especially if you're my boss. And we train people how to do that now. It's okay to go up and say, you know, how are you doing today, Sheriff? I know, you haven't really been yourself lately. Is there anything I can do to help, right? Or just to listen. And one of the questions that came up when I was just teaching this class is, what happens if they say, I'm fine? And I said, that happens normally because that's our defense mechanism, and that's okay, but keep talking. I had a guy when I worked at Johnson County, it probably took me 6 months before he finally said, yeah, I'm a mess. I said, okay, let's go talk. And that's what it's about, is being that active bystander, stepping up, because other than your family, the people you work with for 8 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever your shifts are, know you better than anybody else other than your family. We're going to see those changes. We're going to see when they're struggling, when they have that change in personality, and it's intended to stop that behavior and get them help early. For those of you that have been to the EPIC or EAGLE programs or know what those are, I really liked that program the first time I went through it, but I'm like, why are we waiting until something bad happens? Like you slam somebody down on the ground in excessive force when the problem occurs earlier. So when I built the problem, I wanted a proactive approach and to get that stopped earlier. So it's designed to be able to do that. And it's very hard to talk to people about emotions and feelings and what they're going through. And our training is designed to do that, give them the tools to do that, whether you're a coworker, whether you're their supervisor, whether you're their boss, to be able to go up and say, hey, I see you're struggling, let me see if I can help. And that's what it's all about, is taking care of each other, because nobody's going to take care of us but us. And then the resiliency class we put on, it is designed to give you the tools to not only change your perspective on life, but to give you the tools when something bad happens, to prosper from it, or at least survive it. There's something called post-traumatic growth, which is something bad happens, but with proper training, we can see the good in it and actually prosper from something bad and grow from those things. So our resiliency training is designed to not only change your behavior and your thinking, but also give you the tools to then succeed when something bad does happen, because life happens. Life's not fair, and bad things are going to happen. We talk a lot about in the resiliency class about neuroplasticity and changing the way we process things. And there's a lot of science backed up into how we can change our connections in our brain and how we process things. And it's a lot about focusing on taking the negative out of your life and focusing on the positive, changing your responses instead of that immediate anger or that immediate upset. We change the way we process, slow it down, and relook at things in a different way. And we've had a lot of success. We've had a lot of people that enjoy the programs and really seem to prosper from it. I had a call, I'll give you an example and then I'll stop talking so everybody else can talk. We did this program, the first one we ever did was in Clear Lake, for the Clear Lake Police Department. About a month later, I had a call from one of the gentlemen that was in the class, and he said, I want to thank you for the class. And he said, hey, that's what it's about. We want to keep people healthy and keep people in the jobs, because we lose too many good people because they're burned out. And he said, I went to, my wife and I were going through a divorce. I was going to counseling. We were going to marriage counseling. It just wasn't working, and I was just so angry. And after your class, I realized, hey, maybe I need some help. So we went and got some help on his own. He had some therapy, and marriage counseling was going much better. So having that ability to say, hey, it's okay to reach out. It's okay to need help and to get that help. And it's not a weakness. It's actually a strength to reach out and say, I need that, is what it's all about. And giving people the tools to succeed and be happy and healthy in their personal and professional lives.
Thank you.
Any other questions, just give me a shout.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
So, just real quick, 'cause I'm guessing there's a ton of people really confused right now. The topic of the training, or the quality of the training, has never been in doubt. Never an issue with that focus. The question that was brought to our office is regarding who attended and the target audience of the training. This fund is for public safety telecommunicators. It has to be, but that doesn't limit who else attends. We've had other courses where there have been other public safety responders for a good cross-section type of discussion. In this case, there were the course met the minimum with public safety telecommunicators. So I think after some thought, from our office's perspective, it still fit within the policy, even though there were other folks that attended it. So that's where we've landed, and I think, Rhonda, you wanted everything to be, transparent with the discussion that was going on. So I want to assure you there was never an issue with the training itself. Can I have one thing too?
It would be amazing. My wife is here too. She's been a dispatcher for 19 years. So when I created this program, I wanted purposely to create it for dispatchers because they're the forgotten ones. So if at any point in time we could have a total class of dispatchers, that would be amazing. because I think they have some really good discussions that are a little bit different than police officers or firefighters, EMS. So if there's a way to have a full class of dispatchers, that would be absolutely amazing, because I think they could prosper from talking to their own. I mean, it's nice to have the officers in because they get a perspective from the dispatch, which maybe the officers don't have sometimes, which is really nice, but it's also nice to have a group of your colleagues in there to be able to discuss things with, so, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Pete, and thank you, Blake, for that. And again, I just want to, again, in that clarity, so it used to be turnover rate within dispatch was 17 to 19%. Most recently, a study came out, we're looking at 26, 27% nationwide. There is a value add, as Blake had indicated, to have other emergency services in a class, because it lets one source understand that you're not doing this alone. I just wanted to make sure, and I think that you can just see by the presence of, people that are here, 3 counties represented, that this is a really good program. And I don't want there to be any thought that this isn't good for like all services, and one of my rules that I set forward, I realized that the rule is just, 10 people, but I wanted 10 dispatchers. Otherwise, we would have to cancel the class and move it, right? I would love to see additional, people from dispatch in the class. I would love to see those classes filled with dispatch and then exceed them with anyone else. But there's a lot of agencies that are short-staffed. I just don't want to see that, we wouldn't continue on. This is one of those values that realistically I'd like to see every dispatcher in the state of Iowa take, because it's just that valuable.
Yeah, and I feel your pain with trying to get dispatchers in training. I mean, I currently only have 8 dispatchers. I'm down to 5 right now. And so, at least 5 that are able to function.
Right.
And so, getting them into training is just to get at the bare minimum. The constitution is tough, let alone going on to others. So I feel the pain there. And I think it is what affects the turnout in any kind of training is we already run on the margins as it is. To be able to peel some of those out and get into training is really tough, and I imagine that affects the sign-up. But I think, as Blake said, if we're meeting the minimums to qualify for the funding, that's great. And if other people can tag along and learn along, that's even better. So at least that's my perspective.
I appreciate the grace and the extra time that you've allowed me to share.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you all for coming too. Thank you. Okay. Any other business from the board? Any business online? Okay, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Bruce will make the motion.
Okay. Do we have
I'll
a second? Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.